Wait, Jenny, I'm telling you, you're filling in bits and pieces of your story that I didn't know. I knew a lot, but I didn't know as much as you explained here. And I just I want you to know I'm honored that you've allowed me to be your friend, despite
Yeah.
who my family represents and what we did to you. And I want to make it official. I know I've told you this before, but I want to make it official on this recording that I am so truly sorry for my part. And I became a monster. I became a monster. Like I said
You're
before,
just a child.
I was a child, and we didn't see your humanity. We just saw you as the next girl to hold down. You know.
Well, you were a child. If you were an adult, I would have a harder time forgiving you. But you were a child, so you were a cute child too. I remember that.
Telling me that I was the cute one. I always get a.
You were the cutest one out of the bunch.
So, we've covered some pretty deep stuff in your dysfunctional home, the sexual abuse, violent home, the horrible violent check-in that occurred where you were beaten from head to toe, then your father spanked you, otherwise you weren't going to be allowed to stay. So now you're in the basement, you're locked in, and you had mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I was wondering if we could rehash a little bit. So you said something about you weren't allowed to talk to any girls. So can you explain what being shadowed was, what it was like not being able to talk to other girls? Because that's an important part. That it was an isolation technique that my dad used, and I think it's important to hear that from the survivors, direct from them, how and what it was like, what it was about, and what your understanding was of it.
So the shadowing was that I had to have that I had to have somebody with me at all times. Um,
When you say
and
somebody,
we had a
when you say somebody, that was a
yeah, it
staff
was
lady.
yeah, there always had to be a staff lady unless one of the girls had junior rights as a staff lady.
Okay,
Like a few girls
one of the chosen ones.
had those, yeah, the chosen ones, yeah. um, and let's see, I was only allowed to talk to who was on my talking list, only allowed to communicate with those girls on my talking list. At a given time, I only had 1 or 2 girls out of 20 girls down there, 20, 25 girls. I don't know how many girls we had down there. But I know that all of the beds were full when I was there. And you couldn't even look at another girl if you got caught communicating with someone who was not on your talking list. You'd get demerits. And so some of the ways you could communicate would be by hand. That was not allowed. By eyes, that was not be allowed. If you're walking by other girls, you keep your eyes down. You keep your hands to yourself. Any way they could catch you communicating, you'd get demerits. After my beating, I was pretty. I didn't fight back hardly at all. I was pretty subdued for quite a while.
Well, they broke you.
Actually, yeah, they broke me, and I wasn't going to try to fight it. There was a time that I started the chapstick bottles. I'm not sure if you've heard of this or not, but
Not how you pass notes.
some of the girls and we started passing notes to each other. I started this. I took the note at my cubby, and I would put it inside the chapstick bottle, and then I would I would drop the chapstick bottle on the girl's dresser in her little closet. We all had these mini dressers, so we were passing notes back and forth.
Brilliant.
But one of the girls, this is a very common thing to happen, is if you do something wrong, a lot of girls would feel guilty about doing anything, even the slightest thing wrong, and they would go and tell Pastor Williams. Well, one of the girls felt guilty and went and told on us. And I remember that night, it was the middle of the night, and I remember being woken up to get out of my bed and to go upstairs. And I thought for sure I was going to get beaten. Well, for whatever reason, I did not get beaten that night. But we were told that we weren't allowed to have chapstick bottles anymore. The chapstick bottles were out. And the next day they went through all of our stuff, which happened. That was also another thing that happened pretty commonly, where somebody, and I don't know who it was, what staff member did it, but they would come through. I actually think it was your mom, Patty, that did it, would go through all of our stuff, pull everything out of our drawers, throw them on the floor, and go through every little item to see if there's any notes anywhere that they could find. That was all done the next day or that. Actually, I think it was done that night.
It was my siblings and I. It was
really
horrible. Yeah, we would go down and
I think it was done that night, to be honest.
If it was that night, it would have been only my mom and my sisters and the staff ladies. If it was done at night, because the girls would have been in the dorm. But what they would do is they would send the girls to the school, and then we would go in there and we would just tear the place apart.
Yeah, it would be torn apart.
Yes.
And that happened pretty frequently, as I recall. At least once a month, if not more.
I got really good at finding notes. I got really good at it.
They would have never figured out the chapstick bottle. That dang girl didn't say anything. But we were so desperate.
You remember the pen caps and the clear pens?
So yeah.
The reason why the only clear pens were allowed, the Bic clear pens, is because girls were hiding notes in the other type of pens. So they went to...
that might have been after me, because we had regular pens. But, the desperation to communicate with another girl, to communicate with other people that you're living with, the wonder of who they are, where they're from. We weren't allowed to talk about where we were from. We weren't allowed to talk about our past life. We weren't allowed to talk about anything, our friends from where we came from or anything like that. And the desperation to want to connect to that past was a deep, deep desire to grab onto, to be able to tell another girl, yes, here's my best friend's name. And this is this is the state that I'm from. I'm from Virginia, or this desire to just connect with somebody else was so huge that Hephzibah House blocked it, and they made us silent for so long that we'd be willing to do almost anything to communicate with each other.
There was a theme that my dad had that it was gospel to him, was that evil communications corrupt good manners. He got that out of Proverbs. And so Dad was huge on isolation techniques. So he knew that he had to keep the girls compartmentalized, and because he said if they get to know each other, they're going to pull each other down. But what happened is, by doing that, a side benefit that occurred, and I think he knew this all along, was that it prevented the girls from realizing how they were able to help each other out and join together like they did in the last 15 years and actually able to get the place stopped. But because of Dad's incredible, masterful, evil way he isolated each of you girls, it is one reason why Hephzibah House stayed open for so many years. Because
because we couldn't find each other, and it was before social media.
Yep, it was before social media.
So, I mean, I found Gabby, because Gabby and I were just out there on some social media something. I forgot what it was back then, but I was looking for anyone who'd been to Hephzibah House. And that's when I found Gabby. She goes, I went to Hephzibah House. And Gabby and I found each other. And then between the two of us, we shortly, sometime later, we found Susan and we found other girls and started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and created this big group of who we were and what our stories were all so similar. They were identical to what we've all been through. So I was never beaten a second time at Hephzibah House, and I always wondered why. I think they just thought that they'd broken me enough the first time around that even if I did something wrong, they gave me demerits, and a couple times I had to wear my uniform to church, which showed the whole church that I was a bad girl.
Remember Dave Holland used to tease all the girls with uniforms all the time during the service? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They would make fun of us, and it was humiliating. Another humiliating thing they made us do.
My dad did it. He's like, "Oh, so we have some patriotic girls tonight. You remember that? We have some patriotic students tonight."
Yeah.
I can't imagine how degrading that must have been to you. Sitting there, you're not allowed to move, not allowed to turn your head, not allowed to look around, and you're being pointed out for wearing that horrible uniform.
Yeah.
It was another form of degrading. So the isolation, right. Jenny, you were only allowed to talk to one or two girls the whole time you were there, right?
The whole time I was there. Yeah, for 15 months, only one or two girls for the whole time I was there.
Did you ever feel like you were losing it?
I felt, yeah. The whole time I was in Hephzibah House, I was scared because sometimes we'd be downstairs and we would be told to put our hands down on put our heads down on our arms because we'd hear screaming going on upstairs, and I knew somebody was getting beaten. And you never knew when it would be you or when your time would come next. And it was horrifying to be locked up in that basement with no way out. The fence was so high you couldn't see out anywhere. And then the one time, I was actually allowed out of Hephzibah House twice in the 15 months I was there. One time because I was having very bad abdominal pain. It was severe, and I was in severe pain. And I think it was because of all those pills and vitamins and weird food we were eating that gave it to me, because the hospital ended up saying it was gas pain and sent me home the next morning. But I was covered. My eyes were covered on the way to the hospital, and my eyes were covered on the way back.
Yes, that's what they would do.
So I couldn't see and where I had come from. And that happened in the middle of the night. I remember being at the hospital and just being so scared that I would do something wrong.
And there was a staff lady with you while you were at the hospital.
It was scary.
Time, wasn't there? The nurse was with you. Was it Jenny Hoke or Debbie Drazich?
I think it was Debbie. Okay. Debbie Drazich. And then the other time we were able to leave, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, we all piled into the van, and I don't remember this or not, but I think we all had to wear face masks again. But I'm not 100% sure. I know for sure I did it.
That one wasn't, but I believe we went to the Amish place, didn't we?
Yeah, we went to the Amish place.
Yes. We went to that.
And, yeah, so I was allowed to go to that. So those are the two times that I left the facility, was to go have an Amish Thanksgiving where we went in. We weren't allowed to talk to anyone. Actually, yeah, I don't know. My memory is kind of fainted on that. I remember it was a good time, but that was like my only positive memory out of Hephzibah House.
I remember that. It was fun that night.
Like time going to the hospital.
That would have been Debbie Jones was the nurse. I remember. So
yeah.
Let me go back real quick. So the abdominal plane. Remember the BM chart?
Yes.
So what was
there was a BM chart. Yeah.
Yep. So what was that? What that was all about was so many girls got constipated. They got horribly constipated.
See, I never said the truth on that chart. I never said the truth. I just wrote that I went every day, and then I went in medium size every day. I didn't want to be
Can you
given
describe?
anything.
Are
So
you
I
okay
always want.
with describing that BM chart? Are you able to?
Yeah, the BM chart, you had to say whether or not you had diarrhea, whether or not your bowels were large or small or medium, and what color they were. Is that right?
I don't remember the color
And
part.
maybe not the color part.
But that
Okay.
that chart was for everybody to see.
It was for everybody to see, and it was displayed in the main bedroom out for everyone to
In the
display
hallway.
to see. And so I quickly just started writing what they wanted me to write every day. So I don't yeah, so that hospital visit, I don't it'd be so interesting to get my charts from that night. But I don't even know what hospital it was.
They
But
might have taken you to Goshen because they always avoided the local hospital on purpose. They always avoided the local one. That way they could help keep a barrier, a buffer zone. Everything Dad did was very
I
cocky.
remember a lot of Amish people were there.
Yeah, you were taken to Goshen Hospital.
I remember a lot of Amish people.
Mm-hmm. It's Goshen.
Goshen Hospital.
Goshen Hospital.
Yeah,
they did that more than
once. I only remember going one time.
So a lot of the BM chart, what that was about. By the way, I was sent down more than one occasion while the girls were in school. Mom would say, "Hey, I need you to run down and look at the BM chart and see what." And so I would see all the girls' BM stuff written on there because she needed to know. But what was going on is, we now know. Like I have severe intestinal issues. I have severe diverticulitis. I'm actually right now. I'm on very powerful antibiotics because of another flare up. It's a known fact. Now, back then it wasn't, but it's a known fact now that sexual abuse survivors have bowel problems because of the constant stress from everything that's happened in your life.
Right.
So constipation, there was girls that were given enemas. I always say that word wrong. Enemas?
Yeah, I was afraid of those. I knew that the girls were getting enemas.
Yes, and the nurses, the girls.
Yeah, so that's why I would always write what they wanted me to write. So that happened.
Those were forced
downstairs. And what?
Those were forced.
They were forced.
Yeah, on those girls that were constipated, the nurse would make them do it, and staff lady and a nurse would be in the bathroom with the girl, and they were forced to do the enema.
Oh God. Thankfully, that never happened to me because I lied on the BM board and would go eventually.
So that's probably why you had abdominal pain.
Yeah.
My point is you probably had abdominal pain.
I probably did.
Because stress messes up your bowels. And then they gave you these, Susan Grody and that group in the 80s, they were malnutritioned and starved. And then the girls in your period were actually
we were like overfed.
Overfed. It was one extreme to the next, but it wasn't balanced. It was often not a balanced diet because the diets were not based upon carbs and calories. They were just based on whatever they put together. But they were
exactly. The food was a mystery.
It was a mystery.
Sometimes they would take the food cans and they would not know what the name of the food can on. There would be no label, and they would just dump it into a big pot.
Yep.
And it was just whatever you ate.
I always thought it was so much fun to help the girls. And we would sit and open up cans and surprise soup. Oh, it was nasty.
Surprise soup. I know some of the girls said sometimes, although I didn't see this, but sometimes there would be dog food thrown in,
I absolutely believe that occurred because none of these cans were marked. And they were banana boxes filled with all these dented cans, and they just opened them up and dumped them in. And these girls lived in fear, like you've talked about. You lived in constant fear, and if you were told to do something, you just did it and didn't ask questions. So you've got 4 or 5 girls around a big old 10-gallon pot, just opening cans and dumping them in, So absolutely, dog food got dumped in there. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was kind of gross.
I wouldn't eat that soup. It was so nasty.
And then we did other weird things, like your sister would have us walk around with books on our heads to help with confirmation.
I remember.
And
you had to learn.
I remember one specific girl who was a lesbian was there, and they really worked with her a lot to try to get her to put her shoulders back, and it was just bizarre stuff, and I really felt bad for her because they picked on her a lot. They wanted to try to make her not gay. That I remember that very well, and I really felt bad for her.
The book thing,
then
you're the first one that's brought that up, and you're bringing stuff up that's just triggering memories. So you're correct. I used to witness that. They were made to walk around with a book on their head so they could learn to walk like a lady. That's what that was about.
Learn to walk like a lady, yeah. And I just thought that was so weird. But the staff ladies were also very sometimes they would be nice.
Hey, Jenny,
and then sometimes they would.
You broke up really bad. Can you start over?
Yeah, sometimes the staff ladies would be nice to us one minute, and then they would be so condescending and mean, and totally change their whole personality the next minute. So you never knew what you were up against with the staff ladies either. It was no. I mean. It was like imbalanced. Their emotions were always running high too. And then your mother was always screaming at us all the time. She'd come down and just start screaming at us or screaming over the intercom at us. It was so chaotic. My mom and dad had never screamed with me growing up, so I wasn't used to that type of chaos from your parents. The parents were just so like out of control. The other weird thing that your dad would sometimes pick me to come talk to him upstairs in the office. And you'd feel so special that you'd be picked to get to talk to Ron Williams. And I remember he talked to me more than he talked to the other girls of my 15 months there, trying to get me to, how do you want to call it? Mold, like be his perfect mold, yes.
So let me give you, do you want the backstory on that? There's a backstory to those. So first of all, you're correct. Mom screamed over the intercom constantly, or would come down and be screaming. The staff ladies lived in constant fear of my mother as well, and they took it out on you girls. That was.
Yeah.
Oh, my word, it was so bad. But the counseling thing, so Dad would come out to the dining room and say, okay, Mom, he called her Mom. Mom, who should I talk to today? I got some time. And Mom would say, well, let's talk to Jenny, or, let's talk to so-and-so. Let's talk to Ann. She needs talked to. She's getting a lot of demerits, or the staff ladies are having problems with her. So let's focus on her. And Dad would say, okay, I'll talk to Jenny. I haven't talked to her in a while. But you're right. Certain girls in each group, there was always at least one or two girls in every group of girls that ranged between, back then in your time, it was 15 to 25 girls. Then they started going down like 8 to 10. But those girls that were targeted were usually the ones that were shadowed, didn't get to talk to anybody, always had 500 sentences every week. They never could do anything, while all the other girls got to play. They didn't, because they had all those sentences. When treats were given out, they didn't get to have the treats. Did that happen to you? Were you one of those?
No, honestly, I didn't get that many demerits.
Okay.
So I'm not sure why he always chose to talk to me.
He always had the ones
he did come down, and I remember he chose me many, many times.
He always had
to come talk to him.
He had certain girls that he
focused on. I don't know why he was so focused on me.
So more than likely you were more docile and more submissive to the counseling.
Right.
The counseling, did you ever feel, you remember me asking, I've never asked any of you survivors this, In the counseling sessions, did you ever feel safe, loved, or helped? Like, do you ever feel like he helped you, or did he just tell you what he wanted you to hear and ordered you? What was
Well,
it like?
I wouldn't call it a counseling session as more as it was a religious um, session. It was more to talk about God and how I felt about God in my life. And it wasn't really counseling me on anything that had happened to me in my life. Like, there was no counseling on the child abuse I endured from my brother or the molestation.
Did you tell my dad about what happened to you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I honestly don't remember.
Do you remember
what?
Some girls would tell Dad. Do you remember the
autobiography? Yeah, I don't remember if I did or not.
Every girl was required to write an autobiography about themselves. Were you made to do that?
No.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
So many girls were made to write autobiographies.
Not to say I didn't do it, I just don't remember.
And they were, I read most of them because they would get left on the table. I wasn't supposed to read them, but I read them anyway. And it was horrific how many of these girls had sexual abuse. It was just a common thread. I remember reading these and going, wow, this is horrible, you know. So
you would think with his counseling session, he'd give some kind of counseling, but it was not like that at all. It was more like he wanted to try to get to know me more. And I thought it was creepy and weird, you know?
When you say
and it was scary because I didn't know if he was bringing me up to beat me or whatever. And you never know when you were going to get called up there. So everything that happened at Hephzibah house, you never knew what was going to happen next because they kept you, everything was kept quiet from you.
Yeah, that was on purpose.
Like in the dark. Yeah, in the dark. You were always in the dark. So you didn't know if a girl was about to leave. One day they just came and my parents came and picked me up, but I didn't get to say goodbye to any of the girls. Nobody had a going away party for me. I didn't graduate. I was only 14 when I got picked up. So and Ron Williams wanted me to stay longer, and my parents said no, that they wanted me to come home. He didn't think I was ready to go home. And he told my parents I needed to stay.
Because this is important for you to hear this. That means Dad didn't think he broke you. That's a compliment, is my point. So if a girl left where Dad would call it good terms, where he said, okay, I think that it's time for them to go. They're obedient, they're godly women, and they're submissive. Those girls got to hug everybody goodbye. They got to hug the staff ladies goodbye.
Wow.
Pictures.
Really?
Pictures were taken with Dad and the parents out in the yard, and they would get prayed with and told how much they loved them. But
I thought that was only if a girl graduated high school that they got to have that.
No, that was done for girls that Dad broke, or he felt, or the parents complied with Dad's demands. But if Dad say, okay, your daughter needs to stay another 15 months, and the parents said no, and they wouldn't obey what Dad wanted done, the girls were not allowed to say goodbye or anything. They would just be packed up and shipped out.
Right.
And many times Dad wouldn't even be there.
And I knew that I knew I was going to be picked up at 15 months because on the last visit, my parents came and faithfully visited me every 3 months. We were allowed visits once every 3 months. And on the last one before I got picked up, my mom said, I'll see you. We'll be bringing you home soon. And she wasn't supposed to say that and got in trouble.
Oh, yeah. That kind of stuff visits got cut off. The staff.
My mom often tried to get me to communicate with her. And I was terrified. She would try to ask me, like, what's going on when somebody wasn't looking. But I was terrified. And I wouldn't say anything.
Because the visits were alone. You weren't allowed to be alone with the parents. There was always a staff lady.
No, there was always what's her name? What was her name?
Sandy, Sharon. Sharon did a lot of the.
Sharon was the one. She scared the living daylights out of me. She was very scary. So yeah, okay, I see it.
Yeah, 10 minutes left. So
Yeah.
those visits were monitored, and if the parents would say anything that was against the rules or they weren't allowed to talk about how things were, the visit would be cut off, and the parents would be told to leave, or the staff
And
would
also
leave
my letters that I received from my mom, half of it would be blacked out.
with black
Like
magic
half
marker.
my letters were blacked out, and I don't even know what my mom was saying that was so wrong. But yeah, it was blacked
The
out.
letters being
So
blacked out was a big deal. Any reference to anything, any movies, any TV, any news, any sports, any negative was blacked out with black magic marker.
yeah, my letters were constantly blacked out
And then if a girl would write
from
something out that was disagreed with, because every letter was read, they would be told to rewrite the letter. They weren't allowed to even. It would just get ripped up and thrown away.
yeah.
I used to help
So
my
that
mom
those
read the letters.
are kind of my Hephzibah house.
Well, we've covered a lot of stuff here, Jenny. You're my first interview with a survivor. I'm honored that it's you because your story is unique to me because I remember you're one of the ones I remember so well being checked in. You and Bobby Joe, for some reason, are the two, and then the Laotian girl, Noi. Though you three really stuck with me because you were brutally beaten that day, and I never forgot it. It's ingrained in my brain, and now you're a realtor now, if I recall. Got some amazing kids.
Yeah, I'm an associate broker. Yeah, so I am doing good. I have 4 children, and we go to church, but we don't make it to church every single Sunday, and that's all right.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yep.
we do our best, and it's okay. You know, if you don't go to church every Sunday, the world's not going to end.
Nope.
And I teach my children. I teach my children that. You know, so I have 4 wonderful children, and I'm really grateful for them. And Hephzibah House is just a bad dream at this point in my life. You know, it's just a bad dream.
I hope doing this will help you on your journey of healing. I know that was 25 years ago, but I hope this helps your journey of healing.
Yeah, it really does. I think it's nice talking about it because it helped me remember stuff, and it helped me to have you say that happened. Makes me not feel so crazy when I talk to my parents and they didn't quite believe it.
Let me just say this real quick to what's on recording. You're not crazy.
It really did happen to me.
It really did happen.
But it's just a chapter in my life, you know, just one closed chapter that I was able to close down and go on to the next chapter. And now I'm in this chapter of my life, you know?
Yes. You're a mighty warrior, and I'm honored to be your friend.
But I would recommend that parents should really do research when putting a child into a home, and to listen to your children, you know, listen.
Believe them.
That's what I would recommend. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And once these posts, some people might ask you questions in the comments once I get these all put together. And so if you're up to it, if you want to answer those questions, or if you feel you want to do one more session to answer them all, you just let me know, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Hey, thank you. This was an honor to do this interview.
Thank you.